In this video, we will discuss about emit and broadcast in Angular. Now in Angular, one of the most important components or one of the most important building blocks in Angular are controllers. And communication between these controllers are also of prime importance. But a lot of times what happens is, the relationship between controllers become very complex, and so the communication. For example, now, let us say that you have the following types of controllers. Let us say that you have a controller which is customer, let us say, right? And you have a controller which handles address data, right? And you have a controller which handles phones data, right? So you have address, you have customer, and you have phones. Okay, and assume that these are actually Angular controllers. So I'm going to go and decorate $scope at the top. So basically these are Angular controllers. Now when you create these controllers, you can definitely create them in an isolated manner, but when you start actually using them right inside your project, they can have complicated relationship. For example, I can have a relationship here, where we will say that yes, there is a customer, that customer has address, and the address has phones. So in other words, the controller can be developed in an isolated manner, but when I start using the controllers inside my UI here, I can say here that, okay, I can say ng controller. So at the top I can have customer. Inside the customer I can have another ng controller which is having address, and inside address I can have phone. So in other words, it's very much possible that you can end up into such kind of nested controller situation. Now when you have such kind of a nested hierarchy, then definitely you would like to do such kind of communication. If something happens in the phone controller here, so if some kind of a click event or a change event happens in the phone controller, you would like to propagate an event which goes top to the nested hierarchy. So it will flow from phone to the address to the customer. And if something happens in the customer controller, you would like to flow down the nested hierarchy, right? So in other words, here you would like that the communication channel should probably flow from the inside nested hierarchy to the outside one, or vice versa, or I'll say from the bottom to the top or from the top to the bottom. So for that, Angular has given two kinds of methods. One is called as the emit event, and the other one is called as the broadcast event. So when you call emit sends propagation from the bottom to the top. When you call broadcast sends a message from the top to the bottom, right? So for example, now let us do some coding over here. So now from the customer, if I want the information to flow down to the address and phones, over here I need to go and put the broadcast event, right? And if I want that information should flow or event should flow from the phone to the customer, then here I need to write the emit event code. So let me go and create a method in customer here called as send down, right? So this send down function will actually send down propagation from customer to the phone. And let me create a method in the phone which sends the event up. So I'll say this is send up, right? So from here I will send an event propagation which will actually go from phone to address to the customer, right? So in order to send down the event, we have to say here $scope.broadcast, okay, broadcast, and then we can say here what is the event, okay. So event name, so I'll say my event, and if you want to pass some message out, so I will say message is event from customer, right? In the same way, if I want to go and send the event up, then I need to use the emit, right? So it will be emit, and I will say this is event from phone. Now when these emits and broadcast actually send the events down and bottom, you'd like to actually go and execute some kind of a logic in each one of these controllers, right? So the logics which you want to execute, right, should be written in the on method. So $scope.on. So whatever you write in the on method will be executed when these propagation go from top to bottom and bottom to top, right? So in each one of these controllers, I'm going to go and have a $scope.on method. And also in the on, I would like to get what is the data that is passed and the even the name of the event, or I'll say the event handler, right? So you can see that in the $scope.on, you can get access to the event, from where it is coming, etc. And the second one is you also get access to the data. So I will say here alert. Okay, so we will say that, okay, where is this event displayed? So I'll say this event is displayed in the parent, right? So this is customer, I will say rather customer, and the data is whatever that comes, right? So I will say plus the data, right? In the same way here, the event is displayed in the address and whatever the data comes, and over here I will say that the event is displayed, or the event has come to the phone and whatever is the data, right? So in each one of the $on, I have displayed that where is the event at this moment happening and what is the data that is passed, right? Okay, so now let us go and execute this send down and send up, right? So what I will do is I'm going to go and create a button inside the customer controller. So type button, right? I'll say send down, right? And I will also go and create a button inside the phone. This will say send up, right? And remember that it is Angular. So if it is Angular, you need to use ng click. You cannot say on click, right? So I will say here ng click, right? And also I will say here ng click, and this is send up, right? And remember that you have to give an app. So I'm going to go and say this is ng app is equal to my app. And also we need to go and initialize our app, register our controller. So we can see that I've initialized the app, I've registered the customer, address, and the phone controllers, right? Good. So we are all set, and let us run this application and let us see the output. Okay, there is a problem here. You can see this thing over here should be not like this. It should be like this. This $scope.on actually takes in the event name. I'm so sorry for this. And it then takes in the function name. Okay, so all across we need to go and make this change. Let us do that. So here also you have to say the event and the function, right? And here also you have to say the event and the function. So let us do a control F5, and you can see that there our code is executing. So now you can see now at the top we have customer, we have address, and then finally we have phone, right? So if I click on send now, so let me just click on send now. So you can see that what he is saying, the first thing what he is executing is the customer controller code, right? So he's saying that the data which has come is event from customer, and it is now executing the customer code, right? I will press OK. After that, the event travels to address controller, you can see. So it says that now I'm executing the address controller, and the data what is passed from the main parent is event from customer. And I will say OK. After that, it goes and it executes the phone, and you can see the data what is sent from the parent, right? In the same way, when I do send up, you can see first the phone code is executed, the on code of the phone. After that, the address, and then finally the customer. So basically, when you say that you want to send the event propagation from top to bottom in a nested controller, you need to use the broadcast event, and when you want to send the event from bottom to the top, you need to use emit. Also, I would like to highlight a very important point here. The broadcast event and emit event can also come from address. So in other words, it is not necessary that it has to come only from the outermost element or from the innermost element. It can also come from address controller as well, right? So let us say now, if the broadcast event comes from the address, then it will flow like this. It will first execute the address code, the on code of the address, and then the phone. If you send an emit event from the address, then it will first execute address and then customer. It will not execute phone. So remember that the broadcast or the emit event can also come from in between the nested hierarchy. And if it comes, then it only executes that part of the hierarchy and not the whole hierarchy. Now, one of the requirements which normally comes in such kind of nested hierarchies is stopping the propagation in between of the hierarchy. Means, in other words, for example, let us say that you send a broadcast event from customer. So it should execute the customer on code, it should execute the address on code, and after that it should just stop over there. Or must be vice versa. When you call the emit, so it should execute the phone code, it should execute the address code, and then just stop propagation. So a lot of times, when these events travel from the inner hierarchy to the outer hierarchy or vice versa, you would like to stop the propagation in between. So in case you want to stop the emit propagation, what you can do is you can go and say stop propagation. For example, let us say after the address, I don't want the emit to go and execute the customer code, right? The customer on code. So in this case, you can see that in the address I put stop propagation. So now if I do a control F5, so if you see this, so when I say send up, you can see that it executes the phone code, it executes the address code, but it does not execute the customer code. But if you go and say broadcast, the stop propagation does not work. Look at this. If I say send down, the customer code executes, the phone code executes, right? And the address code does not execute. But why it does not execute? Not because there is stop propagation. Actually, the broadcast does not understand stop propagation. If you do a F11, I'm sorry, exit, not F11, F12. If you do a F12, you will see that there is an error which is shown up here, and this error says that I don't understand. So if I go and see this, you can see that I don't understand event propagation. So in other words, the broadcast does not understand stop propagation. So this is only valid when you do a emit. So it only works in emit. Stop propagation does not work in broadcast. So in case in broadcast, if you want to stop propagation, how should we go about it? Now you can say that it is a sad part or it is a bad part, but there isn't any real stop propagation for broadcast. So it is more of a logical thing what we have to write. So what we have to do is, for example, after the address, I don't want the phone logic to be executed. So in the address, I will go and set a flag here saying that default prevented is equal to true. And then afterwards, I will say here, if in the phones, I will say if default prevented is true, right? Then just return. So in other words, we do not really have a stop propagation. So the phone's code will always execute when you call the broadcast. The only thing what you will do over here is you will just go and write a logic like this saying return true. Okay, and that's the only way to do it, at least in Angular 1.x. So in from whichever hierarchy you want to stop propagation for broadcast, you will set it to true, and in the next immediate hierarchy you will actually go and write this code out. So what will happen is the alert phone won't execute. So again, I'm repeating, there isn't anything called as a real stop broadcast in a real stop propagation in broadcast, right? So this code will execute, but remember, as I've said, that this is more of a logical approach and not really a stop propagation. So if I say send down, you can see it executes the customer event, it executes the address event, but it does not execute the phone event, right? So if you want to stop propagation from emit, you have to say stop propagation. And if you want to stop propagation from broadcast, you have to say default prevented equal to true, and then write the return logic in the next logical hierarchy. Also, I would like to talk about that how emit and broadcast will behave if you have a sibling. What do you mean by sibling? Let us say I have one more controller here called as order. Now, an order controller logically belongs to a customer. So basically you have customer, and then every customer has orders, right? While the address belongs to the customer. So customer has address, address has phones. So there is a nested hierarchy between customer, address and phone, and there is a nested hierarchy between customer and order. But there is no relationship, or I'll say there is no nested relationship between the address and phone, or between the address, phone and orders. So address and orders have no relationship, and phones and orders have no relationship, right? So let us say, so you can see that there is customer here, there is address and there is phone, but logically this order will belong to the customer. So it will be actually be nested with the customer, and with the address it is a sibling, right? So the order is here. So basically order and address are actually siblings. So in this situation, what will happen now is that objects which are not having the nested hierarchy will not receive the events. Means, for example, let us say that if your phone is actually sending an event, it will never be received by the order. For example, you can see here, when I say send up, it goes to the phone, it goes to the address, it goes to the customer, but it did not go to the order. Why? Because order and phone do not have any kind of nested relationship, but the customer and order have a nested relationship, right? So when I actually send from the customer, you can see the event is sent now from the customer. So it does go to the order, it also goes to the address, and it also goes to the phone, because customer has nested relationship with all the three components, right? And also, if you try to send an event, either it's a emit or a broadcast from the address, even that will not reach to the order, because address and orders are sibling and they are not nested with each other. So remember that when you have such kind of a sibling kind of a situation, and if the sibling is not belonging to that nested hierarchy, he will not receive that event. Now, the way we have emit and broadcast method on the scope object, we also have it on the root scope object. If you remember, in the first video of Angular, I talked about the root scope object. This root scope object is the top object of your Angular, and all your scope objects actually belong to it. So on the root scope object, you can call both of the methods. You can call broadcast and you can also call emit. Now, emit does not make sense for a root scope object because he is the top object. So when you call a emit method on a root scope object, it logically does not make sense. But yes, broadcast makes a lot of sense, right? So if you call broadcast on a root scope object, it will actually go and propagate the event to all of the objects belonging to that root scope object. And there is no restriction from where you want to call the root scope broadcast event. For example, I can call the broadcast of root scope from the phone. So for example, I can access here the root scope object, right? And let me go and create a method here called as send all, right? So this send all will actually go and send out the broadcast to all of its child objects, right? So I can say here root scope dot broadcast, right? This is event for all, right? So you can see now inside the phone, I'm trying to call the broadcast, but it will still work because root scope is a global object. So it will work from anywhere, right? So if I now go and call this, so let us say I create a method here. So I'm going to go and create a button, and I will say send all, right? And let us go and call this all event. So I'm going to go and call the all, right? Now I will go and execute this code. Let us see what happens. So there my project is executing. So if you see now, when I go and call send all, errors F12, let us see. Unknown provider root scope. Is that S capital? I'm forgetting the syntaxes now. I think that S is capital, right? Right. So let us go and run this. Right, now let us see what happens. So you can see now, yes, the S was capital. I'm becoming old, so forgetting syntaxes over here. So you can see now he's trying to send an event all to everyone. So first thing is, you can see it does not start, it starts from the top object customer, then it goes to the order, then it goes to the address, then it goes to the phone. So basically, when you say $scope or $root scope dot emit or $root scope dot broadcast, right, it tries to send the message to all of its child or the parent object. So it is like sending to all, broadcasting to all, right? So the difference between $scope dot broadcast and $root scope dot broadcast is that $scope dot broadcast will only broadcast his hierarchical objects, while $root scope dot broadcast will broadcast to everyone. Now, when we have such kind of nested controllers and propagations happening, to and fro, that means from the top to the bottom and from bottom to the top, one of the things we definitely want to do is we would like to subscribe and unsubscribe from these propagations if you wish. So for example, let us say, at any moment of time, if address wants to unsubscribe from the propagation or from the events, he should be able to, right? So for that, what I will do is, let us go ahead and in the address, let us try to create methods, which can help us to subscribe and unsubscribe the events, right? So I will, let us say I will create a function here called as subscribe, right? So in this subscribe, I will actually go and add this event, right? And also I would like to go and have something called as unsubscribe. So let us also have unsubscribe event. Now in order to unsubscribe from the emit and the from the emit and the broadcast event, what you need to do is you need to first have a reference of the $on function or the $on event. So basically here I will say ref, okay, and this ref will actually point over here, and whenever I want to unsubscribe, I can just say ref and invoke it. So this will actually unsubscribe the address event from the hierarchy, okay. So what I will do is I will create here two buttons inside the address, and both of these buttons will help to subscribe and unsubscribe. So I'll just say here subscribe, and this is unsubscribe, okay. So when he wants to subscribe, I will call subscribe, and unsubscribe I will call unsubscribe, right? So there it is. So let me run this. So now there our application is running, but remember that at this moment address is not subscribed, has not subscribed for the propagation. So what will happen is when I say send up, you can see now phone has fired the event. So the phone event has been fired. After that, directly it goes to the customer. It does not go to the address. So if I now go and say subscribe, which actually goes and subscribes the the address. Now if I say send up, you can see now phone has been executed, after that address, and after that customer. And if I again say unsubscribe, now phone, no address, directly customer, and done all. And even if I say send all, customer fires, order fires, phone fires, but address does not fire. So basically, if you want to go and unsubscribe a controller from the emit and broadcast event, what you need to do is you need to get a reference of the $on and then just invoke it. This code here unsubscribes from the emit and the broadcast event. So in this video, basically we saw what exactly is a broadcast, emit, and on events. We also saw what exactly is a nested controller, and we saw that how emit helps us to propagate the event from the bottom to the top and broadcast from top to the bottom. We also saw that what are the constraints when we have a sibling controller, and then finally we also saw that how to stop propagation for emit and how to stop propagation for broadcast. And we also saw what is the difference between $scope broadcast and $root scope broadcast. And finally we saw that how to subscribe and unsubscribe from broadcast and emit. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Now the next video is on Angular filters, which is done by Mr. Sukesh Marla sir. So keep learning, and the next video is on filters. Thank you very much.